Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the July Planning Committee. Just to remind you all, it's being live streamed and recorded. Shall we move on to agenda item 1? Do we have any apologies for absence and substitutions? Councillor Sam Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Jane Walker. Councillor Martin Smith is substituting.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item 2. We have the draft minutes of the previous meeting. I'd like to propose them as a true and correct record of the meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Any comments on the draft minutes? No? Okay, shall we move to the vote? All those in favour of agreeing the draft minutes? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. Agenda item 3. Do we have any declarations of interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? So that's only me then. I have a declaration of interest and non-pecuniary on item 5. I will leave the meeting when we get to item 5, and the Vice Chair, Councillor Wilkinson, will take the meeting from that point and then call me back when that item is finished. Oh, Councillor Sam Smith.
Martin Smith. Yeah, the Longdale Lane, Ravenshead 1, as Chair of Ravenshead Parish Council, I'll declare non-pecuniary interest because there is mention in the papers that S106 money may be transferred to Ravenshead Parish Council.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been made aware that you can stay in the meeting. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 4, which is the total site at road number 3 at Colic. We have a speaker who is George Dickens. He's the representative of the applicant. Do you want to move towards the lectern and speak, George?
Good evening. My name is George Dickens and I'm presenting tonight on behalf of the applicant, Chancery Gate. Chancery Gate is a national developer specialising in multi-let industrial development. We have been operating for more than 30 years and have 4 offices across the UK. A similar application at the site was put before this committee in January 2023, and the committee resolved to approve the scheme on the basis that the application represented the regeneration and renewal of a redundant parcel of land located in a highly sustainable location for employment development, and that it was supported by the council planning policies. As you have already heard from your officer, obviously this is pre-written, sorry, the extant application included a building which was to be used as a builder's merchants. Since permission was granted, the occupier who had intended to occupy this element of the scheme has decided not to take the unit. And as such, the application in front of you today includes for a redesign and reconfiguration of that parcel of land, and now provides for an additional 7 industrial units, totalling 19 units across the site, and includes the provision of a second access off road number 1. We consider the scheme in front of you to reflect market demand for industrial units in the area. We have once again worked closely with your officers through the pre-application discussions and the application process to agree the amendments, which has included the moving of an adjacent bus stop to facilitate the second access and allows for the provision of additional landscaping along Colic Loop Road frontage and road number 1. As per before, all the units will benefit from active electric vehicle charging points and further passive provision throughout, and cycle storage is provided across the site. Photovoltaic panels are also proposed along with air source heat pumps for each unit. The scheme will deliver a number of benefits, including the redevelopment of previously developed land within a sustainable protected employment area, and the provision of new employment opportunities to benefit the local economy. As before, the proposed development is considered to be fully compliant with all the relevant planning policy, and therefore we would encourage members to support the officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now, Planning Officer Nigel Bryan will introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Read before you. And sorry, just provide a quick brief update in respect of condition 7, which is on page 33 of the agenda. There was just some concern about the compliance with the relocation of the bus stop and in terms of its timing. And therefore, it's just proposed to amend the condition to as follows. Proposed industrial units shall not be brought into use until an application has been submitted to Nottinghamshire County Council for bus stop GEO 336 to be relocated as shown on drawing and 201068 -602 PO5 is proposed to be amended primarily because the actual time frame for when it will be built will largely be under the control of Nottinghamshire County Council. So most we could realistically do is ask for the application to be submitted to them prior to the units being occupied. In the round, the application is for the redevelopment of the former Total site. The Sainsbury's is now in situ and there's also a Builders Merchants here. As has been indicated by the previous speaker, there is an extant permission on the site and it's largely being redesigned as a result of a Builders Merchants not coming forward. And this just shows it in a bit of context from the local plan. This was the proposed site layout. As you can see, the one road that leads with the two access points here, and there'd also be a third access point in this location to unit number 19, and this is the location of the bus stop that's being altered. So in the roundest sense, there's 19 industrial units proposed to create over 13,000 square metres of commercial space. Proposed uses would be E brackets G of the use classes order B2 and B8, which is in effect light industry, storage and distribution. The site falls within Colic Industrial Estate where the principle of industrial development is supported by policy LPD 44. And then adequate parking would be provided with 138 spaces, 23 of which would be electric vehicle charging and infrastructure installed for the future passive for units 1 to 17. 56 cycle spaces were also proposed to be provided. And there were 2 bus stops immediately adjacent to the site. There's one here, and this is the location, the one that's going to be slightly re-sited. So it is in a broadly sustainable location. Hazardous substance zone has now been removed following the removal of the oil tanks and the grant of the previous permission on site. In respect of biodiversity net gain, the application was submitted prior to those regulations coming in, so there's no requirement to provide it on this particular site. And the application site does fall within flood zone 3. However, the submitted flood risk assessment has identified that with the finished floor levels at least 600 millimetres higher than the existing, that there wouldn't be any detrimental impact from potential flooding to the site. I'll just run through some of the slides. This was the previous extant permission, and really this is the main reason for the redesign, because this was going to be the Builders Merchants that's now been removed. And these are just some of the elevation treatments for the units. As you can see, the solar panels on the roofs here. And this is just some of the cycle storage that's been proposed for the 56 bikes. And this is just really showing the bus stop that's in situ that would need to be relocated. And these are just some of the materials that they're looking to use, which is typical of most industrial estates. And this is the plant that would obviously go more so towards the site periphery. But overall, the scheme is considered to be policy compliant. It would bring forward currently a vacant site and have large enhancements to the local economy. So we're recommending approval subject to conditions as outlined on pages 32 to 38 of the committee report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to propose item 4 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Anyone want to speak on this item? Councillor Whiting.
Thanks, Chair. This is obviously a very positive application, I think, and it is good that we're going to see this piece of land, which is effectively wasteland at the moment, brought back into use. So I definitely welcome it from that perspective. I just had a couple of questions, if I may. We had some flooding in Colic in January, and the draft Section 19 report of that incident suggests that a watercourse which sits just to the south of the picture that's on the screen here, which flows into the Trent, backing up could have actually been a reason for that flooding. So I wonder if it's possible, this is a question, I'm not sure if this is possible, Chair, would it be possible for a request to be made for Section 106 money to go towards the dredging and maintenance of that watercourse? Is that something that we're able to do? And then as part of that and linked to the flooding, could we find somewhere in condition 15, or could this be done in negotiation, perhaps without a condition, to try and find a nature-based SUDS solution rather than going below ground with the SUDS to improve the aesthetics and lower the flood risk? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
In respect to the Section 106 contributions, there's no contributions as part of this agreement. And in respect to the drainage, I think it is going to utilise the watercourse you have mentioned to the south. But really, as part of that scheme, that would need to be approved for the final details with the Environment Agency and the Lee Flood Authority. But I think it would be hard, really, given that the vast majority of it is culverted and things such as that, I understand, to actually have more of a nature-based, solution to the drainage in this instance, I'm afraid. Say it were to be perhaps more of a greenfield site, then that's when you can incorporate these things. But for sites such as this, I'm afraid it is a little more difficult. But thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Strong?
Thank you, Chair. It is, of course, very good that this site will be brought into use with the opportunities for employment and also inclusion of apprenticeship schemes as noted in the planning application, in the planning report. I'm also concerned that with the access from the Loop Road and the two entrances now, about security of the site, whether there is a management plan for security to perhaps put gates on these entrances. It would be a sort of place which would be wide open at night, and we have experience in the past of, for want of a better term, boy racers and other invasive elements. And I think it would be a good idea to consider the security of the whole site, and I can't help but feel that it will be an incentive to possible tenants.
Thank you.
If members felt it appropriate, an additional condition could be added in respect of, gates on the entrance points. I imagine they're likely to be done in any event. I can't imagine that they would leave them open at night, but we could always look to add an additional condition if members felt that was appropriate.
So, Mr. Bryan, I'd suggest that it was just a management plan for the security of the site when it's not in operation, and then that could include, for example, gates or other means which are agreed with the applicant.
So I think that's agreed. Is everyone happy with that? Yep. Anyone against that? Okay, thank you. Any other comments at all? Okay, we'll move to the vote. So with the... Oh, sorry. Sam Smith. Councillor Sam Smith.
I was hoping you'd forget, actually, because I didn't want to put on record that I agreed with the previous speaker, because I don't think I ever have in the past. But I had it written down in my notes to mention the fact that we've got a similar site of this in Stoke Bardolph, which sadly didn't come with barriers at the start, and it's caused huge issues with antisocial driving, racing at night, etc. Barriers are now installed, but obviously that comes at a cost later. So I was pleased when I heard someone mention that previously. And I would like to see the condition, but if it can be done through a management plan, then let's do it through that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I've seen the disturbance that those boy racers cause, in that area. Thank you. So we're going to move on to the vote. We're voting on agenda item 4, Recommendation is to grant the permission. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. So, as we're moving on to agenda item 5, I'm going to leave the room, so I'll adjourn the meeting for 1 minute.
Right, if we can restart the meeting now in Councillor Allen's absence. If we can move on to application 2014/0273, land at corner of Longdale Lane and Kiggle Lane, Ravenshead. Who's taking this, Liz?
Thank you, Deputy. This outline planning application for the construction of up to 31 dwellings accessed off Longdale Lane has been brought back to Planning Committee to seek approval to modify a Section 106 agreement which is currently pending. The planning application has been considered and approved by Planning Committee originally in August 2018 and again in October 2022 to approve the introduction of a phasing condition which would allow the development to be brought forward as custom and self-built properties. There were no amendments in terms of the layout or the proposed density of the scheme compared to that which was originally considered in 2018. The application now seeks additional amendments to the Section 106 agreement to further enable the development to be brought forward as custom and self-built properties. Once again, the proposed amendments have not resulted in any changes to the proposed layout or the density of the scheme as approved in both 18 and 2022. The application site comprises of an area of 0.86 hectares located to the southwest of Longdale Lane and north of Kiggle Lane. The site is identified as a housing allocation within the local planning document under LPD 67, allocated H18. There's just a Google image view of the site, which is situated in this area here. And there's an indicative plan of the layout of the 31 properties that was approved in 2018 and 22. The proposed changes to the Section 106 agreement compared to that previously agreed in October 2022 are as follows. The obligations contained within the Section 106 agreement will allow the formation of an access road up to base course level to serve the development of the individual plots without triggering the requirement for contributions upon commencement of the development. An option to make a commuted sum payment in lieu of on-site affordable housing provision in accordance with Gedling Borough Council's Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning document, a viability clause to provide a review mechanism that enables a reassessment of development costs in the event the development is not delivered within a set time frame, the provision of Section 106 contributions pro rata for each phase of development rather than one single trigger upon the commencement of the development as a whole, and a revised bus stop improvements contribution of £25,800 up from £18,800 has been requested by Nottinghamshire County Council Transport and Travel Services. There are no other proposed changes to the development or that previously approved planning conditions. The allowance to create the access up to base course level without triggering the relevant planning contributions, which would normally become payable upon commencement, would ensure that where appropriate, custom and self-built plots can be brought forward in phases, with each phase having a proportional contribution payable upon its individual commencement. I should also point out that in accordance with Section 5 of the NPPF, specifically paragraph 66, national planning policy stipulates that there should be an expectation of at least 10% affordable housing for major developments. One exemption to this 10% requirement is where the proposed development is proposed to be developed by people who wish to build or commission their own homes. And as such, in the event that less than 10 non-self-build properties are brought forward on the site, then there will be no requirement for affordable housing in accordance with local and national planning policy. Similarly, in the event that less than 10 non-self-build properties are brought forward, it would not be considered expedient to have a local labour agreement, as these would all be being constructed by the self-build developers. Other financial contributions, including education, transport, primary healthcare and open spaces, would be unaffected by the percentage of custom self-build plots delivered on site and would be paid proportional per phase. In summary, the proposed amendments are considered reasonable, compliant with local and national planning policy, and the recommendation is therefore that the Borough Council grants outline planning permission subject to the conditions and the applicant entering into a planning application as set out in page 42 of the agenda pack. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Lewis. I'm going to propose agenda item 5 for the purposes of debate. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Would anyone like to speak, please? Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Chair. I should probably start by apologising. I have half a dozen kind of clarifications, so I don't know if you want to deal with them one at a time. The first one, I mean, I realise that, you know, it's already got planning permission, but these are things that I want some clarification on, please. So the Nottinghamshire County Council Forestry Managers Report said that there should be a condition that there should be a fence in front of the Trumpers Wood, which is the woodland to the kind of south of on your design, but that I can't see an appropriate condition that would protect the trees. Just concerned that when building starts, we don't want any accidental damaging of the trees. Is that something that could be added, do we think?
Do you want to say these one at a time, Lewis? Or, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the conditions myself. I can't see anything specifically other than condition 14, which suggests that a mitigation strategy and tree protection plan to geographically show the locations of the trees, but that doesn't mention anything in terms of fencing, but I see no reason why a similar condition couldn't be amended to include a protective fencing along that boundary.
Okay, thank you. Again, this might not be you, but I noticed that there's a provision for a 2-metre pathway to go in front of the development, which will run along Longdale Lane, which is fantastic. That's what we want. And there's a surface water drainage scheme to be submitted. Is there any way we could make sure that we include in that some of the surface water drainage must be on Longdale Lane? Because what happens at the moment on Longdale Lane, because obviously that's not developed, water runs down Longdale Lane. It's got nowhere to go, and it ends up at the crossroads, just at the bottom corner there of your plan, which is one of the main crossroads in Ravenshead. So I don't know if that can be added or a note can be made of that. Thank you, Councillor Bestwick. I think what we will do when we get the details submitted to us would take some advice from the lead local flood authority in terms of the acceptability of the details that are submitted. Okay, thank you. The next point is, in the report it says the main impact of the development is likely to be from the construction phase. So what I'm concerned about is there doesn't seem to be any term to the period of which these self-builds can continue. Anybody who knows Ravenshead knows that Longdale Lane is the main arterial route through Ravenshead. Just to the south of your plan there, we have a main crossroads with a filling station. I'm concerned that if it could go on for years, and that people who live on Longdale Lane, Kighill Lane, Heather Lane, Chapel Lane, they're going to basically be living in a building site. Is there anything we can do to set a term to this sort of self-build development?
So in terms of the condition, I think it's condition 1 stipulates that all the phases, the phasing plan must be submitted within 3 years of the permission. So they would have to submit the reserve matters applications for each phase before that 3-year period. In terms of the actual outbuild time, it would be difficult to put any condition or restriction on the deliverability of the time that those properties would take to be constructed. So I'm not sure we'd be able to condition that. But in terms of the application being submitted for reserved matters, there is that 3-year time period.
So it's 3 years to start the build, but it could be 20 years to finish it?
So it will be 3 years to submit the application, and then it's 2 years from that approval of the reserved matters to start the development, yes.
Yeah, you see my point though, that it could be an endless amount of time from the first house starting to be developed to the last house being completed. If there's nothing we can do, then there's nothing we can do. But I just would, wanted to make that point.
Yeah, I take that point, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, one more. I know you've taken the number of dwellings from LPD 67. I saw that. But when I read the Great Nottingham Planning Partnership Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment, dated October 2023, it did say that in Ravenshead, for a medium-sized development, which was 10 to 49 dwellings per hectare, that it recommended 18 dwellings per hectare, which on a site of 0.86 hectares would mean that that's just 15 houses on that space. As it is, the plan currently is for what would be 39 dwellings per hectare. I can't see how that fits in with the amenity of the rest of Ravenshead. Now, I know it's already on LPD 67, but on the development next door, what we call the Piper Home site on Cornwater Field, that started off in LPD 67 as 70 dwellings. It's now 47 when they get building them again. Is there anything that can be done to limit this to something more reasonable that would actually fit in with the rest of Ravenshead and the adjacent development? Not necessarily 15 per hectare, but somewhere in the middle.
I think it would be difficult given that the application's already been resolved to grant permission. They could in fact carry out the development in accordance with the permissions that have been granted already if they signed off the 106. And in fact, this obviously is, as I say, in accordance with LPD 67. The applicant, the permission itself does state up to 31 dwellings. Now, I know obviously they could go up to that number, but the applicant has stipulated that they may not go up to 31. And based on the provision of self-build plots, that number may come down, but obviously that's no guarantee.
Okay, thank you. I suppose the bigger question, which I don't expect you to answer, I'll address later, is why on LPD 67, when according to all the notes I can find, the highest number of recommended houses dwelling per hectares is 20, and we've agreed to do 39, which is, I believe, beyond even the urban recommendations. But I will address that in a separate issue. In the meantime, thank you for your answers.
Thank you, Councillor Bestwick. Before I move on to asking if anyone else wants to, I just want to check if we're okay with the specific amendment to condition 14, I think it was, in respect of the tree protection plan. Everyone okay with that being amended in the conditions? Yep, okay, I'm seeing support for that. Councillor Catherine Pope.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask if we agree to what's been requested of us here today in terms of the contribution being phased, does that have any knock-on implications in terms of other planned work or delays to anything else that money would be used for?
So the only alterations that the concept of the self-build or custom-build properties would have in the phasing that goes along with that, which was identified in the report, is the affordable housing and the local labour agreement. But that's just, as I say, in terms of it being compliant with national policy. The rest of the contributions would still be for the same amounts that were previously going to be generated, but would just be delivered in a phased approach, similar to the dwellings themselves. So there wouldn't be no change in terms of the actual costings of those, no.
or to what they're likely to be spent on?
Exactly so, yeah. They would remain as our typical Section 106 agreements and the clauses that go in with them, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Pope. Anybody else? Councillor Martin-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Lewis, you mentioned that the County Council is asking for an increase in contribution towards a bus stop. I think you mentioned the figure of 18,800 in 2022. In 2018, it was 15,000. Other contributions, such as the school places, was 86,000 in 2018. In 2022, they're asking for 157,000, but no change in this application. Public open spaces was in 2018 just over 50,000 for capital and 21,000 towards revenue. Again, there's been no change in that. I'm sure we've all noticed there's been a little bit of inflation over those years. I wonder why the only change in the contribution is for a bus stop and nothing else. Oh, sorry, and I missed out. I think the National Health Service have also, their figure hasn't gone up either.
Yeah, the opportunity to submit revised contribution requests was there, but the only one we received was from the bus stop contribution. So I can't comment as to why not on the others, I'm afraid.
The public open spaces, would that request come from Gedling Borough Council?
It would, yes.
And we've chosen not to ask for an increase. I wonder why.
So there's been no changes in terms of our policy, in terms of the actual monetary values in the policy. So that policy hasn't changed since the application was last considered by Planning Committee.
Sorry, just to come back to you, Mike, for those of us who've been involved in putting out, fitting out playgrounds, etc., the cost of raw materials, the cost of labour, etc., has gone up considerably since 2018.
So we're undertaking a review of the open space, the supplementary planning document, in terms of those monetary values. So that's something that's ongoing at the moment. So we're looking to review the policy in its entirety, and we'll be going out to consultation on those proposals in due course. That's correct, yes. Yeah.
And can I just ask one, thank you, Chair, thank you, Mike. Can I just ask one further question? Would you mind coming back to the map? I think probably the fourth slide on there. That one there, if it looks a little bit like a flag, a linesman's flag. So if you look at the handle, the green bit, the long green strip. I have requested through the planning department information regarding what's to become of that strip just there. From here, can't read what's on your drawing. I'm just wondering how it fits in with the rest of the site.
So in terms of the drawing, it's indicated here as being a biodiversity park project. But yeah, that's the indicative scheme, yeah.
Yeah, so there'll be no housing, thank you.
No.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Anybody else? No, in that case, we'll move to vote. Can I see all those in favour, please? Okay, anybody? Oh, keep your hands up, please. Sorry. Yeah. Are you voting, Councillor Martin-Smith? We're just checking you. Okay. Any against? And any abstentions? Okay, that has been passed. Thank you very much. So we'll adjourn the meeting again briefly whilst Councillor Allen returns to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. We'll move on to agenda item 6, which is an appeal that was dismissed. Any comments on this particular one? Okay, it's for noting. We're all happy to note it. Yeah, thank you. And agenda item 7, which is also an appeal which was dismissed. Any comments at all? Happy to note it. Thank you. So agenda item 8, which is for noting. Are there any comments on agenda item 8? Future applications? We're happy to note it. Thank you. And agenda item 9, which are the planning delegation action sheets, which is for noting. Any comments at all on those? Happy to note it. Thank you. And finally, agenda item 10, I have no urgent business, so I'd like to close the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance.